Okay. Let's start with just sitting quietly for a moment. And I don't know about anybody else. The last couple of days, the quite an abrupt change in the weather and the season. And it's always good to take those sort of things into account. It generally, to my experience, takes a few days for our bodies to adjust. If you look at the sort of animals around you, they change in various physical ways. Maybe their fur grows thicker or something like that. We often don't take into account these sort of transitions. So, your awareness of what your body requires, shall we say, is important in these transition times, and that should extend to the exercises that we do. You may suddenly find, because it's chilly, you're a bit stiffer or something like that. There's all sorts of things that can actually change. So trying to keep that idea there in your mind as we go through the various movements. First of all, rubbing your hands together and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The part of your chest. Belly. And relax. Sit back. Feet out into the reclining position. Make a couple of slow, gentle breaths and get a sense of just dropping into your chair. Going back to this idea of sort of, how we respond to periods of change, like the one from summer to autumn and so on. One of the things that can really help us with that is a sense of awareness, and that comes from a sense of stillness. And in Tai Chi, as a meditative art, the stillness comes from the drawing of your awareness into your body, and part of that awareness is an awareness of the way that your body responds to the pull of gravity and the ground beneath you. And this sense of calmness and stillness that will build with that focus of attention. As you sit here, just be aware of the areas of contact with the chair. So in the upper part of your body, it depends on your height of the chair, but round about the sort of top of your back, behind the rib cage, that kind of area, and just very gently pull in, tighten up there, and then release. And it's really about, it's not about a strong exercise. It's about really experiencing that releasing feeling that allows us to get to drop back. I always feel, particularly in this position, that the degree that I'm dropping back is not equal to the big feeling I get of dropping. So a lot of the feelings internal. And then the same thing, lower back, hips, buttocks, that kind of area, just stiffen up and drop. Notice the effect that has not just on that area, back and belly and so on, but also on the rest of your body. And one of the things we begin to appreciate is that when we do something like this releasing feeling with the center part of the body, actually the effects of that ripple out to the rest of the body. So this becomes a very important area to focus on. So now coming to the upright position with hopefully a sense of what what is meant by terms like release, letting go, how that feels in your body, so that the process of releasing, there's a kind of technical side to it, but also a more intuitive side, and that can really help to guide our intention. So try the same thing again. Just bring your weight a little bit forward so that some of your weight is in your feet, and then just lift your shoulders up and let them drop. And just as before, you had a sense of dropping into the chair, even though you're not leaning back in the chair at the moment, there's still the sense of dropping into something. I think of my shoulders dropping into my rib cage, for instance. That's just one view of it. And then once again, lower back and belly, hips, buttocks, probably your thighs as well. Tighten up and then just drop. So this is something that we want to try and build into our practice all the way through. I'll use the term releasing, letting go a lot. And this is what I mean by that. And it can apply in various ways, as you see. So trying to keep that feeling, particularly in hips and lower back, of dropping, allowing gravity to work through your body, and feeling that you drop into something and something continues to support you. It's a sort of background awareness, and just slowly turning your head. One of the ways that the movement can often be described in Tai Chi is that it's an internal massage. And again, if you've been affected by the sudden change in temperature, the change in weather, you may well have stiffened up in muscles and soft tissue, joints. And this quality of movement, this fluidity of the movement, is one of the ways that we would seek to begin to get some release from that tightness. Be patient with this. Then hands in onto your shoulders. Don't try and sort of speed up that process. When you're more experienced with it, then you have a sense of what you're looking for, and you've got that greater sense of the focus of attention and intention that helps the process, but it still isn't necessarily going to be quick. It varies from day to day in my experience. And then going forwards. One of this country's great teachers, in my experience, a chap called Dan Doherty, who's dead now, but he was very well known and trained in Hong Kong, won various tournaments, kung fu tournaments, and so on and so forth. So very much a martial artist, hands down two sides. In his later life, developed Parkinson's disease. He carried on teaching, but he also did a lot of writing. Had a group of people around him, encouraged him in that. And in one of his later books, written at this time, he described Tai Chi as the martial art of change. So I think coming from somebody like that at that time and that in those circumstances was really quite a significant observation. And then winding around. Movement and change are obviously quite related, and so how we approach the physical movement is perhaps an indication of how we also approach the process of change in our lives in one way, with a sense of not straining, of fluidity, of being able to observe the change from the point of stillness, change direction, and so on and so forth. So the way that we, for instance, with this exercise, wind our arms around, Could also be the way that we, you know, the style, if you like, the mental style that we approach changing the seasons or whatever the change is. And best hands. So now, tilting forwards. If you're finding that you're beginning to stiffen up in your back, because ideally you would say you'll be slightly forwards in the chair, supported by your feet, supported by your hips, supported by your spine. So in theory, you don't need the external support. In practice, you may find that you're beginning to strain. And in that case, do sit further back, give your back, especially your lower back, some support. And using the rocking of your pelvis to bring your weight more into your feet, and then pushing down through your feet, push yourself back up, let your hips sink down into the chair, and then forwards again. So trying to move from the ground beneath your feet, from your hips, pelvis, rather than very focused on your shoulders and your upper back. That will come later. With your attention again in that center part of the body, turn a little bit. So on the one hand, it's very good to have aspirations about how you may want to develop your practice, things that maybe you want to get better at for one reason or another. That helps to keep our practice alive and energized. It stops it becoming a kind of stagnant thing that we do just because we've always done it. Turn in the other direction. And on the other hand, there's this awareness of what is appropriate right now. So the aspirations are kind of midterm, long term, but we have to start from where we actually are at any given moment. And there's no kind of judgment involved in that. It's just a recognition. This time, when you go forwards, turn in the center of your body. So you bring your weight across to the opposite foot and then roll back to the hip behind, turn, go to the opposite hip, forwards again. So using this awareness of your weight moving and the roll of your hips, your feet, the pelvis, to actually draw your head and shoulders around in a nice smooth circle. Once again, encouraging focus of attention into the center of your body, and then go back in. So if you want somebody to go around in the circle, if you wanted to draw a circle on a piece of paper, use a pair of compasses. You put the point in the paper, and that remains still, and you sort of twiddle the compass, and the pencil goes around, and it makes a nice smooth circle. This is almost like the same thing upside down. Your kind of fixed point, if you like, is that contact with the chair through that awareness of your contact with the ground, with your feet. And you're moving in the center of your body, and that's drawing your head around. You can imagine the crown of your head is actually drawing the circle. And then stepping out. Push your one foot forwards, put the heel down low, the toes, gently press the foot into the ground. We call this planting the foot. And it's very soft movement. The same kind of movement like, if you were planting something in your garden, seedling or something, but sort of gently press the earth in around it. So it's just, again, giving yourself time and space to feel that connection, that contact with the ground. And then the other foot. You may find it comes more easily with one foot than another. And back. So these are some of the qualities that we want to feel like a kind of constant force. A feeling of sinking in towards the ground, rooting down. A posture, an aligned posture, aligned with the pull of gravity that allows that free passage of gravity down through your body. And an awareness that when we do that, there's a response in the body, particularly from deeper in the body. It might be helpful to think of the skeleton to begin with, that sort of neutralizes and counters this downward movement. So you've kind of got these two movements in parallel. And that's a very important source of kinetic energy that we work with in Tai Chi. So we're going to make use of those movements and those ideas, bring the movements into our arms and our upper body. So, you know, obviously a lot of our attention is going to be on that. So have your weight back in your hips, turn your hands palm forwards, and move your weight forwards, and at the same time just rotate your arms. This bird folds its wings. From the side, if you watch what I'm doing, you'll see that my arm, my hand, hangs straight down from my shoulder. It rotates and the weight moves, and the combination of that creates quite a significant movement through my arm and my hands. All I'm really doing with my arm at this point is rotating it. I'm not trying to go there or there. So this illustrates something really important in Tai Chi. If we're going to maintain those basic, very fundamental qualities that we were just very briefly, in a sense, looking at in those earlier movements, then it's important that we don't overuse the arms. And we can recognize that we can get a lot of movement in our arms without actually having to put massive effort. There is effort there. It's not that the arms aren't important, but we don't want them to dominate them. One of the images we commonly use in Tai Chi is that we imagine moving through water. So this time, when you go forwards, and again, I can only do one arm, but watch. I start to push my shoulders back, but the pressure of the water holds my arm back. It just follows on slightly afterwards. Same thing going forwards. This is fisherman cast net. This is to stop us doing something like this, just waving the arm around and not moving the whole of the body. We're told in Tai Chi that when one part of our body is in motion, our whole body is in motion. Our whole body is one way or another engaged. And since awareness and intention are important aspects of the movement, we try and cultivate an awareness and intention to be aware of the whole body, not just arms and hands. And that sense of the whole body movement, I think, makes a really important contribution to our well-being. In various ways, it feels more pleasant. The experience of being in our bodies improves. It also leads us into this idea of the movement itself, the flow, the energy through, which is one of the things that we look to cultivate into harmony. This time, leaving your arms out in front, but imagine there's a ball behind, so that as you come up, rather than swinging back, they get pulled over the ball, so you're rolling the ball into yourself. And initially, at least, we're not looking to lift the arms. If you look at what I'm doing here, look at the arm on this side. So if you see the angle between arm and body, it doesn't actually change necessarily to begin with. So there's this quiet quality in arms and hands. That quietness can enable you to apply some attention and intention to other sensations, like a sense of an expansion, like a wave coming up from your feet. And then we can find that that wave does actually push our hands up a little bit further. I wanted some detail on that because essentially this is how we want to approach all of the movements. To not do too much with the arms so that we can retain an awareness of what might be happening in the body in terms of change, of expansion, contraction, in terms of energy. And to give those other aspects a kind of way into the movement. When we start learning Tai Chi, inevitably we follow what the arms are doing. But those movements in the arms will provoke a response within the rest of our bodies. So it's that response that we're really wanting to cultivate. This time, as you come up, turning your hands palm in, and drawing your elbows apart, feeling expansion in the chest, and the belly, and then this is pigeon spreads its wings. So again, your elbows go out, but elbows and hands stay slightly in front of your shoulders. Feeling the expansion and contraction in your chest and in your upper back. So becoming aware that that whole area of the body where there's some very big, powerful muscles and some powerful energy, actually very much connected to this movement, and eventually becoming the sort of source of the movement that moves the arms for you. Again, we get that sort of wave-like quality that begins to build from within your body. Do one more of these. Change into pushing wave here. Hands stay in front of the hips, but elbows still go out a little bit. So there's still that expansion in the chest, going forwards from the hips, that wave-like movement, pushing, really pushing your elbows forwards. But from here, they come in and they get pushed forwards. And the shape of your arm ensures your arms curve, your hands curve upwards. Got a strong feeling movement, but without straining in your back or your shoulders, your arms. Do one more of these. And then lower your hands down so they're just above the height of the thighs. Roll your fingers into a hollow fist very gently and punch with both arms. And with this one, your elbow comes straight back, but not behind. Going forward, combination of your arm extending outwards, your weight moving, pushing your fist forwards, and rotating the arm. So the last three movements are all the same, the lower part of the body. It's simply your weight moving, your pelvis tilting. But we have three very different feeling movements as an expression of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the first of these, pigeon spreads its wings. Do these as a little sequence. So from here, open your hands as you come back from chest opening and elbows drawing apart and going forwards. Now your hands stay in line with your hips, coming back, but elbows go out. I'm exaggerating that move to the way, and then pushing away. And then elbows staying in line with your hips and punch with both fists. And just see if you can feel the uniqueness of the patterns of movement within your body for each exercise. There's crossovers between all of them, but it's almost like there's a series of pathways, routes running through our bodies that are, if you like, uniquely associated with an individual exercise. This is where we increasingly begin to focus our attention. These are the areas, these small changes within the body are the things that are most likely to produce a response to our attention. And they become bricks and mortar, the building blocks of the bigger movements. So the change from one movement to another doesn't have to be big and dramatic. It could be as simple here as not bringing your hands out, but keeping them in line with your hips. Here, as simple as not pushing your elbows out. But here, when we go back to pigeon spreads its wings, our elbows go out, and so we feel that change within the body. You don't have to restrict yourself to just the things that I'm pointing out. Just one more time. Forwards position. You're going to just unroll your fingers, winding out. And then basically pushing. So for any given movement, we observe the external pattern That's the thing that we can see. And the major part of that is almost inevitably going to be in arms and hands. We begin to copy that. And if we're paying attention, if we're keeping sort of aware within the movement, then that awareness will begin to reveal to us these inner movements, changes. And that's where we begin to place our intention, so that to produce a change doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be, as we've discovered, as simple as just keeping the elbows in rather than out. That's in many ways quite a crude example, but it's useful to bear that in mind. Time. And then turning your hands palm down, and turn as you go forward, let that push your arms out, swing around, polishing the table. The movement is all in your hips, pelvis, expressed through your arms. Stand up and show you this from the back so that you can get a better impression of that. My hips go back, swinging around, and then leveling, and then changing direction. Obviously, your hips aren't going to move around in the same way, but still starting to generate the movement from that central part of the body. One more time. Turning your hands, arm up. Gentle press downwards through feet and hips together, pushing that wave-like movement up through your upper body and then releasing out. Expanding and contracting. Note that in order for your upper body to expand, for your arms to go up, hips and feet actually press downwards. So we reassert that significance of the rooting down, the connection to the ground. Reminding ourselves that that is one of the consistent intentions in Tai Chi, is to maintain the root, to maintain the connection to the one more time. Letting your hands come down and then turn them out so fingers point away from your body. Then you get pushed up. This is the wild goose, that lovely image of the bird in flight. It conveys quality, smoothness, flow, strength. Trying not to strain in shoulders, the big muscles of your arms. Just aware of the bones in your arms, spine, legs, that shape, that strength from within the body. Parting the clouds, going forward slightly, and then back into your hips and then pushing up. Remembering that releasing feeling and just seeing if you can maintain that. One of the ways we do that is by recognizing where there might be tightness and stiffness within the body. So, for instance, with this one, if as you go forwards, as I've experienced a little bit today for some reason, I get to about here, it feels like my back is tightening up. And what I want to do is try and release a little bit there. There's nothing particularly serious, it's just we will get these responses in the body. And if we can release them, then we encourage that fluidity of the energy. Your hands drop down and dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Now the intention is to expand through one side of the body and contract. So there's a slight pressure downwards through the foot on the opposite side, with an extension through that side of your body and then the contraction. Maybe you can feel within the body, the movements, the expansions, but almost imagine every cell between the sole of your foot, the tips of your fingers, expanding slightly. No one part of the body having to strain to make this quite difficult movement of pushing your hand up above your head. Time. And then let the hand come all the way down. Bring both hands around front of your belly. This time feeling the movement, the expansion through the middle of your body, middle of your back more. Hands pressing up, coming back down to the center. And then pushing out to the sides. Okay, just observing subtle changes, sides and your back. And then trying to see those as the sort of source of the movement in the upper part of the body, rather than it being your arms and hands. Moving from within, from inside to out. One more round of this. One foot out, just let your heel rest on the floor, knees slightly bent, scooping the sea and looking at the sun, the sky. And the opening in the front of your body, and then feeling the contraction there, the expansion through your back. Very carefully, this is obviously stronger exercise for our backs and some of the earlier ones. Don't overdo the movement. Remember, one of the things that we're trying to cultivate is this internal flow. One more time. And then once again, fold your fingers into a hollow fist. Push forward, this time your head going up and your arms following, grasping the tiny things. Notice if I exaggerate slightly, again, there's an expansion in the chest which contracts. Again, feeling that connection between chest and upper back and the energy there and the movement of your arms. Again, that's not to suggest there isn't other movement going on. And then changing over. And grasping the tiger's ears. Good. And then bringing your foot back, giving yourself just a moment to settle once again into this posture. We're going to move from sitting to standing, so you're taking account of that, what's required for the gentle transition. And one of the things, rubbing your hands together and then tapping over your face. And over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Up part of your chest. And your belly. And your legs. Okay, and then standing slowly. And come standing upright, and rather than just, oh, I've got to dash into this, standing upright, give yourself a moment to settle. You may want to stand next to the chair, if that's a bit of extra support, that's fine. That can be very revealing, very interesting. I'm going to move mine out of the way so I don't keep bumping into it. But, you know, consider your posture, feet are hip width apart. Waist a little bit forwards in the feet and a little bit closer, just allowing your hips to settle back and allowing again your attention to settle into your body. Just ask yourself how long that took. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, just to once again touch that kind of quality of stillness, quality I would describe as spaciousness, but then we can begin to move on. Letting your hips drop back and pushing up. Arms hanging by your sides to begin with. Really expanding, growing out of the ground, growing out of the root. Contracting back into it. Now your hands again cradling the ball, the standing version of rooting down, expanding and contracting. At the end of the movement, turn your fingers outwards, going into the wild goose, expanding and contracting, and then letting your hands drop down and cross in front of your belly, parting the clouds, expanding and contracting. Once again, using the sequence, because now we go back to cradling the ball, and we can begin to again just get a sense for the subtle changes, particularly in the upper part of the body, almost entirely in the upper part of the body, because legs and hips are doing the same thing for each exercise. And as you get to know the movements better and the sequence better, those internal movements become much more significant. One more round. Good, and shake hand. One of the vital components in Tai Chi, as we've seen from repeated exercises, is the transfer of the weight that moves the body, and it's also something that we do constantly. If you walk across the room and then back, you're transferring your weight all the time. So it's a really important physical process. And if we do it correctly, then that really helps our sense of movement. You could argue our sense of change. So just Tai Chi looks at this quite closely. Start with your feet parallel, hip width apart. Imagine parallel lines going through the floor. Turn one foot out, step forward with the other foot, and just begin to transfer your weight foot to foot. So, a couple of things about this to bear in mind. If I think, well, I want to go forwards and I lean forwards like this, I'm more likely to stumble, to fall over. If I can move from the ground, I keep that sense of the root and of the stability that goes with that. I also maintain my posture much better. And so the movement, the energy that comes from the transfer of the weight is actually more likely to be transmitted to different parts of the body. The second thing related to that is that I'm not in a hurry. I've got forwards, backwards. I'm just taking that little moment to again release, particularly in hips, foot, to get that sense of contact with the ground, and then feel the push back, and then the same thing there. We can cultivate that by paying a lot of attention to it, by spending time with that releasing. But in everyday life, it really only takes a second. It's much more to do with a mental attitude, if you like to think of it like that, than it is with a kind of dramatic physical move. There is a physical side to it. It's that sense of releasing that we looked at earlier, but it's really the intention to do that on a regular basis. And so even if we lose it a little bit in between, which we may well do in that process of change, change can be quite disruptive. There are these little moments of punctuation, the comma in the sentence, where we can regain that sense of being centered. And again, that helps us to make change. Then when we do that, we also raise our toes and our heels, so more of the weight flows down through the supporting leg. Try and maintain your upright posture. And then step in. Plant the foot forwards. When you step back, it's the ball of the foot that goes down first. So that little moment, that split second of the intention to settle, the intention to root down, really contributes a great deal to our stability. Try that on the other side. Without that moment of settling down, the step in, because we're moving quite slowly, become quite wobbly. There are other things involved as well. This is not a guaranteed miracle cure, but everything else that we might do, might want to check the alignment of our body, make sure we're still letting the hips sink back, so on and so forth. We might have to deal with physical issues like maybe like a painful knee or hip or something like that. Because they're all factors that we have to consider. But I'm talking about the initiation of how we deal with that. I'm not suggesting for a moment this is just going to cure everything. And then heels and toes. Tai Chi has a series of writings associated with it. And one of my favorite quotes from that writing is that we should seek the stillness within the movement. And this is what I think was implied by what Dan Doherty said when he described it as the martial art of change. And then stepping in. And take a few steps either forwards or backwards, depending on where the room is. Just letting your attention rest in that process of walking. And then going back. And now stand with your right foot forwards and mirror my movements. Move your weight back into your rear leg, your left leg. Hands down by your side, and you turn your body to the left. Let that swing your arms up, expanding in that left side of your body. Go forwards and turn a little bit to your right. The arms come down. Turn a little bit more, expanding the right side of your body. And as you do, bring the left foot in. Unless you're going backwards, in which case do it the opposite way. Plant the foot forwards and go forwards. Do the same thing on the other side. You may find that you're able to just raise your knee a little bit. I'm going to change direction. And then I'm going to go forwards again. You could go forwards and backwards. You could go to your left or to your right or diagonally. It's a very adaptable exercise. Key thing is here, seek that stillness through your awareness of the connection to the ground, through your root. And again, I'm going to change direction. And then good. Go back to your chairs. That stillness that enabled us to navigate transition can be very distant. You know, as we come into autumn, there'll doubtless be lots of stuff in the shops and in the adverts telling us about Halloween and Christmas and so on and so forth, and you know, things rushing around and so on and so forth. We can find that sense of stillness, bringing our attention into our body, and who knows, maybe we start to appreciate other aspects. You know, the transition from summer to autumn has its beauty in the changing colours of the leaves, for instance, and many other things. So when we can access that stillness, we can then begin to appreciate the dynamics around us much more. I remember one of my students in the middle of a day workshop when we were having a break, just in one of the local villages. I was standing by the door, just looking out over some houses. There were some trees behind the houses, and he came and stood next to me. And then after a few moments, he looked at me and he said that when he did Tai Chi, he always thought trees looked much clearer to him. And I think it's a really interesting view that when we generate that quality of stillness, there's also a clarity that goes with that. And with that clarity comes the ability to move with what is happening much more successfully. So we learn to bring ourselves back to that stillness. And in the last exercise, Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain, really sort of symbolizes that, I think. The arms coming out, expanding, feeling the contraction through your body, your hips sinking into the chair, the hands drawing in, and the final movement, the final stage, everything just settling down. Mostly we would keep our breathing just in the background, letting our body breathe, but you might choose to take a breath in here. Just begin to associate that process of settling down with a slightly deeper sighing out breath, for instance. And these are the things we can take away from the practice into our daily lives. One more time. And yes. Thank you very much, everybody. As always, please do feel free to contact me if you have any questions, but hopefully you found that useful. Bye for now.